you can actually handle facts that are uncomfortable or painful or represent painful experiences. What your subconscious absolutely destroys your life with is when you start to add opinions of what that might mean to those facts.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Jeff Heilman Project. We're so glad that you tuned in today. We are sitting back in the studio. We've been gone a couple weeks, although we had some pre-recorded episodes. So welcome back. And I would like to ask you, how have you been since the last time we were here? It's been a couple weeks.
Hey, I've been good. I've been working on a couple of deals at work, working on this whole quantum influence content. I've got 90 days of content ideas ready to go and just need to start posting on LinkedIn, Twitter. Also saw that Substack is really making a push. Justin Welsh just posted something on the fact that Substack, he got 9,500 followers in 2 weeks.
Never heard of it.
And it is a new platform, social media, which allows you to control your, like you get the email addresses of your subscribers. So it makes it
more personal.
It just gives you better control over the data versus Facebook. You don't have anybody's contact information unless they post it. And Substack's the other way around. So I think it's a thing. And I don't know, it's probably going to have a tough time against TikTok and Instagram. But if we look at room for platforms are disruptive over television, and new platforms are disruptive over old platforms. So I'm looking at these things as we start to launch content and media around philosophy and what we're doing in it. The truth is that there are only every human being is unique, of course, but there's only so many different archetypes of people. And let's say there's 1,000 different archetypes or 2,000 different archetypes. If you divide that into 8 billion people that you can get access to, you're going to find 10,000, 15, 20, 50,000 people that think like you do. And you're not going to have to work nearly as hard at convincing them to pay attention, because the algorithms will find those people for you if you just make consistent, pure signal content. So I'm getting a little bit more bold about those types of things and recognizing that this podcast is an example of something that we've always tried to be true to who we are, true to what we do. And I think it's starting to resonate. Case in point, we had 3 or 4 times the number of downloads last week that we've had on a regular basis on the audio side.
It must be the mustache. For those of you who haven't seen the podcast in a while via YouTube, Mr. Heilman is mustache is so long it's about to hit the microphone.
I'm scratching it. I'm going to do a little ASMR.
A little ASMR with that face. Well, being out of the normal cadence for getting into the booth and just like not really thinking about what we should be talking about today, I had no idea until just a few hours ago. Well, not even a few hours ago, like an hour ago. I literally took a nap, woke up, and was like, this is what you should talk about. And so it was like clear as day. It was what we're supposed to be talking about, according to what I picked up on my inner ear, was, have you ever told the story? And for some reason, you're supposed to tell the story of falling through the grate at the golf course.
Oh,
and the message for today, or the episode for today, is scars and how they form us, how they shape us. So with the intent and the idea of scars and how they shape us, they immediately tell us the story of the golf course and your elbow scar.
And the reason it scarred so badly was because I didn't know I was supposed to do anything to it, like put antibiotics on it or anything. So it kind of got a little infected, and then the skin.
So describe really the scar bad. For those that aren't watching.
I've got a scrape scar underneath, and a cut scar that runs probably 2.5 or 3 inches from the outside of my left. Let's see, radius and ulna. Which one's the radius and which one's the ulna? I think the radius is on. Radius would be probably this one. So the ulna that goes from basically the ulna bone about 4 inches down from my elbow up to about 1 inch down from my elbow, cutting across. And then I've got another thinner scar that goes from the top of the radius across my elbow that's probably 6 inches long.
Yeah, it almost looks like you had elbow
It
surgery.
looks like I had it. It does. It looks like I had elbow surgery. And this would have been in 1992. I was 17 years old. This is a total workers' comp claim, like waiting to happen. And I didn't even know what that meant until I was probably 30. I was working at Shoreline Golf Course in Mountain View, right next to the Shoreline Amphitheater where they have all the concerts, next to Google and World. It's right next door to Google's world headquarters. And there's a golf course there that has a cart barn that holds 60 or 70 golf carts. And you have to spray the carts down. Well, that water's got to go somewhere. So the water goes into a drain. The drain is separate. The drain actually runs between the driveway that slopes down into the garage and the garage. So you spray them off on the driveway. The water runs down into the drain, and then you drive the carts across the grate into the garage, park them, and plug them in. Well, my buddy Lee, this big Army guy, wore, what are the pilot glasses? What are they called?
Aviators.
I'm like, oh, it's like flying, and there's sunglasses for flying. Aviators, that's right. He used to wear aviators. He had a buzz cut, really ripped because he'd gotten out of the Army. And then he was just looking. He had a wife and a kid. I don't know what he was doing, working my minimum wage job, same as me. But Lee had taken the grates off the drain because you needed to scrub the grass clippings and ducky dust because it would clog the drain, and every 6 months or so you'd have to clean it. You'd have to dredge it, which was the most fun part of the job, right? You're dredging it with this big hook of nast. And so he had taken the grate off while I was spraying a golf cart down, but I didn't see him take the grate off.
Oh, gosh.
And so I turned around and
how big are these grates?
Oh, it was probably maybe a foot wide, and maybe there were two sections of it. It was 8 feet, and there were 2 4-foot sections that were a foot wide, and they're iron, so they're heavy. They probably weighed, 20 pounds.
Okay.
So that you could drive a 1,000-pound golf cart across it. Well, he took the grate off, and I didn't know it. And the drain is like 4 feet deep.
Ugh.
So I stepped back into it, and I fell 4 feet.
Oh, God.
With one leg, and obviously that's going to topside you.
Yeah.
So, and I slid into the stucco wall, and I cut my arm, scraped, scratched, and cut my arm open, so much so to where when the scar actually healed, I couldn't fully extend my elbow because it would pull on the scar tissue that hadn't yet softened. So I could only.
So are we talking like? So you probably should have had stitches.
I should have had. I should have gone to the.
You probably.
I should have gone to the emergency room because number one, I could have gone septic because I've got bird shit in the water
and rust
and all this other toxins that could have gone mainline right into my bloodstream. I'm cut open. I'm bleeding, but I didn't even think about it. It was just like, well, okay, probably should look where I'm going. That's like,
what'd you go do? Get Band-Aid? Did you even get a Band-Aid
on it and went back to work? Probably. Maybe I went home and took a nap. I don't know. Stole some gas on the drive out.
Oh gosh. So yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why I wanted
scars prove dumb.
Well, they
Dumbness.
can, yeah, and so
should have just looked where I was going.
But
that's funny. I haven't thought about that in years.
I think it's important that we tell these stories because I think every kid looks to their parent or their grandparent. Like my grandpa was missing, a finger, his pinky finger, and his other two fingers
were table saw.
Were mangled because he on a table saw, but they were able to reattach the tips of his fingers. So every child looks to their parent or their grandparent and notices scars, abnormalities, moles or things like that. And so they want to know because it's like a physical representation of your life. Your
That's right.
scars that you carry are physical representations of your life. And this is just like, I'm feeling like it's like the perfect segue to maybe you could speak to us about psycho-cybernetics and just like how people carry and refer to their scars. Like that scar on your elbow, believe it or not, as silly as it could be, if you chose to go down the I'm dumb, I'm such an idiot route, like that could have been a determining factor for the rest of your life for something if you let it. So,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, to me, the scar, what does that scar represent? It represents a time in my life when I was young and enjoying being free and working at a golf course and doing a job that was easy and fun and playing lots of free golf and being with my buddies. It was one of the most fun times I ever had. And just wasn't paying attention one day and you end up cutting your arm up. But I didn't have there's no muscle or bone damage and it doesn't hurt. I don't think about it. I haven't thought about it in years, but it is a physical sign of growth and doing something dumb at the time that made me look where I walk for sure and pay attention to stuff. But Psycho-cybernetics, if you guys haven't read the book, the internet and cell phones have basically replaced reading for most people.
It's so sad.
And Jessica and I grew up at a time where we had to read books if we wanted to get knowledge because that's where the knowledge was. And there's a book called Psycho-cybernetics, published in 1960 by a plastic surgeon turned psychologist and really peak performance coach named Dr. Maxwell Maltz. And he started out as a surgeon in the 30s doing plastic surgery. And what he found was that as he got better at doing plastic surgery and helping people heal their wounds, their self-images would change. And as a result, their performance in their lives would change as a function of the self-image, as a function of the surgery. And he was met with this very strange dichotomy of cases in about a 3-month period. He treated one guy who was a burn victim. He had 7 or 8 different surgeries because you can't operate on the whole body all at once. And he's got waiting periods. It's like 9 months of surgeries to get this guy kind of put back together again. And he did incredible work, and his whole family was amazed. And then he had this other gal that there was like a tiny mole underneath her eye that just really bothered her. And he took the mole off, 5 minutes, froze it, sutured it up, antibiotics, done. And he comes back. He tells the story. He comes back at the 6-month checkup, and the surgeries were 3 months apart. And the 6-month checkups were 3 months apart for these 2 use cases, 2 clinical studies. And in the case of the burn victim, he was furious and wanted his money back. And he said, "What did you even do? I don't see any difference." And he says, "Okay, well, let's talk about this. Here's the before and after photo." And he's got, melted mongoloid from Temple of Doom or Raiders of the Lost Ark and the German guy that melted his face. And then you've got a guy that's, decent looking and got his body parts put back together. And I mean, his hands had been melted together to where he couldn't open. Now he's got use of his hands and touch back in his fingertips and nerve repair and all this stuff that had happened. His family members were crying because they couldn't believe that they'd had their son returned to them. And he says, "Well, I know all of that, but I don't feel any different." By comparison, the woman who had the mole removed from her under her eye, at the 6-month mark, they come back. She's lost 60 pounds, changed jobs, tripled her income, gotten married, gotten pregnant, bought a house, expecting a baby. Totally, completely transformed human being because of a mole that's not much bigger on her face than the one that's on mine. And he goes, "I got to quit doing what I'm doing."
Yeah.
Because the surgery is not the culprit for change. It's the self-image. It's what the scars mean.
Yeah.
It's what the mole means. It's the attachment of meaning to some physical disformation or disformity. And so he goes and he starts doubling and tripling down on psychology, peak performance, meaning, the attachment of meaning to belief, to self-image. And what he ends up coming up with is this phrase, which I've memorized, which Joseph actually has a tattoo in Japanese, I guess, that says this quote, which is that the essence of Psycho-cybernetics, which is his book, the essence of Psycho-cybernetics is the calm, accurate, and ultimately automatic separation of fact from fiction, fact from opinion, actual circumstance from magnified obstacle, so that our actions and reactions can be solidly based on truth, not our own or others' opinions.
I like that. I like how you could highlight not our own opinion. Like even our own opinion can be jaded. Our own
Oftentimes it
opinion
is, yeah.
is not fact. It's not reality. So when you think about that, how could you apply that? Like how could somebody apply that? How do you how does he talk about, or how have you found success in like evaluating your real life and or your life and deciding what is real or what is, how do you get to that point of enlightenment?
I think that it really comes down to writing. I think you need to get good at writing your narrative out and figuring out. And I was just thinking about, as soon as I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to sit down and write out my narrative about money and the money that we've made and those things, because your narrative is basically a brick wall made up of bricks and mortar. The bricks are the facts. Those are the things that hold up your life. But the mortar is what allows the bricks to do their job, and it holds it together. And the mortar is, actually, I would say it's the other way around. I think the bricks are the opinions. I think the bricks are the opinions, and I think the facts are the mortar. The fact is what allows your opinions to stay in place.
Well, we were talking this morning about feelings and how feelings are a direct response to thinking, and thinking is a direct response to belief. And so if you're feeling sad, it's because you're thinking sad, and it's because you believe sad, right? Like
Yep.
so being able to correctly look at your narrative and say like I could be saying, well, I was just I got married at 19. I didn't go to college. I didn't, like my narrative could be married young, has never had hasn't never had a job, got, pregnant young, like just ignorant, didn't go to college, didn't do anything. I'm just an ignorant, young, married person whose life has been set before me, and that's it. Or I could choose, and that is a narrative that I could have, but that is not a narrative I've ever had, because I just was so focused on saying, if I'm going to be a 19-year-old stay-at-home mom, then I'm going to use this time as wisely as I possibly can to read books, to go as soon as the computer came out, find out online classes or courses or master classes or anything that I could do to gain and acquire knowledge during my down. Like, this is a gift that I've been given to be able to stay home with my kids. And the last thing that I want to do is just be another statistic of a 19-year-old mom who has no education and is the only thing that she's good at is keeping her kids from killing each other. So it's like, how do we choose to write our narrative? How do we choose to go back and look at what we've been given?
I think we need to understand the relationship between facts and opinions that make that wall happen. The subconscious, which is really what controls your belief level, is programmed by your narrative. And the subconscious can actually handle facts. There are facts about my life and my history that, while I may not be proud of those facts, I can actually handle the fact that those things are true. Because my subconscious, our subconscious is always looking for It's looking for a handshake between what it believes to be true and the outside world to line up. And the only time you start to get wacky is when the outside world doesn't line up with what you actually believe or what you want to believe. And that's why dreaming and dream building and looking and stretching your imagination of seeing what's possible is so important, because it creates disparity between where the subconscious is taking you and where your physical circumstances are with all limitations. So when we understand that our subconscious can handle the facts, my parents were divorced when I was 7. That's a fact. It was very painful going through that, but I can handle it. My subconscious knows, okay, it believes that my parents got divorced. One lives in California, the other lives in New Mexico. There you go, right? You have parity there between the story that you've got and the fact. So you can actually handle facts that are uncomfortable or painful or represent painful experiences. What your subconscious absolutely destroys your life with is when you start to add opinions
of what that might mean
to those facts, where those opinions are not self-serving. And the truth is if it's an opinion, it's not a fact. By definition, it's not a fact. So if we're going to pick the opinions that we tie to the facts in our narrative, you can't change the facts in your narrative, but you can change your opinion of those facts. And if we can understand that by changing the opinions of the facts to start to spin a narrative that says that, hey, my parents got divorced and that makes me white trash, let's say, versus my parents got divorced and that put me in a position where there were lots of advantages to me growing up and taking responsibility at an early age, which is one of the reasons why I had no problem becoming a father at the age of 22.
And it became the foundation for a great marriage, because I learned what maybe not to do, or how I didn't.
What not to do, and we learned that we needed to set new patterns, and which is how we've been married now for almost 29 years.
Well, I just love the fact that when you think about the perfect example, and perhaps that's why I got the idea to talk about your scar on your elbow, is that you were having fun. Like the fact that you believe that that is a representation of a fun time in your life.
That was a fun time in my life.
People don't normally look at 6-inch scars on their bodies and say, man, that was, unless you're maybe a dirt bike rider or something, and you're like, yeah, check this out. That was fun, But that is a perfect example of choosing to believe a way based on a fact. I have a 6-inch scar. It was very painful, but I'm going to choose to believe it is a representation of a fun time in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it helps that you were actually having fun at that time in your life, and to be able to look back, because I think a lot of people have negative thoughts back and would believe that their parents didn't want them and that's why they got divorced, because it was birthed out of a very stressful, unhappy situation. And so they let that environmental factor become the kind of the molder, if you will, for their future thoughts, for their thoughts later. So
and if there's anybody listening to this that wants to know, all right, Jeff, I'm sold, I want to upgrade my narrative, what do I do? Here's what you do. And I think I've talked about this on other podcasts, but effectively get a piece of paper out and go get a black pen. I recommend a black pen. It's easier to highlight against. And go and write your narrative out. Don't show it to anybody. This is not anybody else's business but yours. You're not looking for approval. This is just your stream of consciousness on what you think the narrative of your childhood, or how you deal with finances, or jobs that you might have lost, or a divorce perhaps in your family. Write out the narrative of what you think happened in black pen. And then take another pen, preferably a color, or a pencil or something else that you can easily identify. I like using black pen and red. I like that combination. It just looks really cool, black and red. And then go back through your narrative and circle all the opinions, all of them. What is fact? What is opinion? If it's fact, leave it alone. You're not changing the facts. But if it's an opinion, circle it. And then go back through all the opinions that you circle and ask yourself, is this the best opinion that I can make about this fact that it's attached to? And if the answer is yes, leave it alone. If the answer is no, and what you might find is that there's a lot more negative opinions in your narrative than you might originally have thought, cross that negative opinion out and rewrite it with a positive spin, and then rewrite your narrative almost like Mad Libs, to where you rewrite your narrative with all of the positive opinions. And again, Are we changing the facts? Nope. Are we changing the opinions? For God's sakes, I hope so, because we're the ones that put those opinions in there in the first place, or somebody put them in and we forgot to take them out. But when you start putting positive opinions about facts in your life, positive or negative facts, you start to redraft and re-see and open up this whole aperture of things that you think that all of a sudden you become consciously capable of doing, making millions of dollars, having success in business, closing monster deals, starting a company, all these things that I didn't know that I could ever do. And I've done all these things. Played professional golf for 10 years, started a multi-$100 million business that was almost valued at $1 billion when it was right before it was sold. I've made millions of dollars. I've sold hundreds of millions of dollars in software over my lifetime. And all of this without a college degree or any real formal education outside of a couple of years of high school. Can't code software even to this day, but I don't need to code software. That's not my job. So doesn't mean it wouldn't hurt for me to learn it, but I haven't been held back by not knowing how to do it was the point I was trying to make.
It seems as if, and I would encourage anybody when you're rewriting and you're looking at writing your narrative and wanting to change this picture, perhaps that you have of yourself, that our negative opinions have been birthed out of intense, stressful, negative environments. And just consider that, especially when you're young or impressionable, or these things that might have happened to you during childhood, that you did not have control over those environments that you were in that have now placed this negative opinion that you've now carried with you, this negative opinion of yourself. And so when you look at the fact of, like Jeff said, my parents are divorced, or he fell into the grate, like just take his story, for example, the fact that he was able to associate falling through the grate as being fun, it's because he was having fun. But if you look at something negative that happened that has now become a self-defining thing in your life, like I'm an idiot or I'm stupid or something like that, because in a stressful situation like school and your teacher's yelling at you and they're telling you, why can't you get it? And you're stupid, you're never going to graduate, you're only going to get Fs or whatever, like recognize that those negative opinions have been words spoken over you, but they're also because it's an intensely stressful, fearful situation that you're in, and these emotional things just get rooted many times when you're in circumstances, I forget what that's called, but when you're in a circumstance that's highly emotional, those tend to be the ones that we grab onto. Those are our little clingy opinions, as high emotion moments. And so when you're rewriting your things and you're considering, is this fact or is this opinion, also consider the time that you were in, the environment that you were in that. And I think 9 times out of 10, you'll find that if you would have chosen to be in that place, you would never have chosen to be in that place in the first place. Like you wouldn't volunteer to be where you found yourself when that idea or that opinion of yourself became rooted in the negative. Because I mean, I know a lot of the struggle that you've had in the past would be with like not making more money, but then you also have to consider like these are startup environments where 9 times out of 10 the guys don't make any money, and it's super stressful and it's super demanding and it's super risky and it's super scary. And so if you don't hit that one, that's not out of the
Yeah.
norm.
And I did a year at Perfect Go. That was a startup. I did 6 months with Elon and Kimball. So call that year and a half. Teja was 2.5. So that's what 2.5 and 1.5 is 4 years.
Yeah.
I did 6 months with Iman. That's another. So it's 4 years and 6 months doing that. I did a year of consulting. That was 5 years and 6 months. I did what other ones did I do? Oh, onejobs.com. That was a year, 6 years and 6 months. And then what was the other one I did? CA was Post. Oh, Mashery was kind of a startup. It was incubated by Intel, but I would say I've done what 7, 8, 9 years, including Intel, 9 years of startups. Like that's
And
I
those
wouldn't
were
I
all
wouldn't wish that
really hard,
on my worst
difficult.
enemy.
I find it like I just have to believe that if you were based on this environmental factor, like if you were pre-IPO something and you were just having the time of your life and everybody's popping monster drinks and you're staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning and you're hashing out code and you're just having a great time, and then that goes belly up. It's like you might form an opinion of, hey, we failed, but man, that was great. I was just having fun. I was in my 20s and we were part of that startup and it tanked, but man, it was a great, like, you'll see like there's an environmental response, I think, that happens, that if you're going to put your whole heart, body, and soul into something that's really, really hard and really, really stressful, and then allow yourself to make an opinion of yourself as being a failure because that thing that was so heavy didn't hit, then it's probably a result of a very, very difficult, stressful time that
Yeah, you can't.
everybody's
Yeah,
going
and you
through.
can't if you're doing startups to make money. I don't know if you're going to make it. You
Yeah.
gotta. I mean, all the startups that I saw, obviously, you have to make money if you're going to survive. But all the startups that I saw and were a part of, which would have been Zip2 with Elon and Kimball, One Jobs that got acquired later, ultimately by Connection IBM. Um, what was the next one? Perfigo that was acquired by Cisco. Excel Ops was acquired by Fortinet. Teja was acquired by Western Digital, and then Mashery and the ESG group that were acquired by Intel and then divested to Tibco. I feel like I'm forgetting a startup and my own consulting business. The thing that drove us wasn't, oh, we want to get rich so we can buy McLarens. The thing that drove us was we've got a way to solve a problem that nobody else can solve. It was a rite of passage. It was showing off how smart a solution we could build through ingenuity and focus with a skeleton crew in most cases. I mean, Perfigo, we got acquired by Perfigo got acquired with 25 people for almost $100 million. Like, who does that? That wasn't a Instagram that was 19 people for $1 billion, right? But it was a lot of money for a small team of people. I mean, it was $3 million per head to join Cisco, and we ended up paying back in spades. We sold over $2 billion worth of product over the next 20 years while that NAC appliance product stayed on the line card, on Cisco's line card before they finally shut it down in 2019. We got acquired in 2004. So 15 years, that product stays on the line card, just printing tens of millions of dollars of revenue a year, every year for $2 billion total. That to me is a huge success. And I played a very small part. I was an inside sales rep there for a year, but I was an inside sales rep that produced almost 60% of the revenue for the whole company. And it pushed off us needing to take a second round or missing payroll. So I played a critical role at a critical time for a very small company that was intimate in our approach to trying to solve a really big problem with technology that didn't exist if we didn't build it. So when you look at being able to do something like that and then you have a win, that becomes part of your narrative. Like, I never went backwards in income from Perfigo. It's
It
always
became
been,
a scar.
it was a scar.
It became a thought
like
scar.
a circumcision of bad beliefs in your head. That's like, well, if you're going to believe bad, let's not forget about the year you went from 20 grand to making $750,000 in 1 year as an inside sales rep, doing the same damn job you were doing for free for Citibank. It was the same exact thing. And I just think that we owe it to the community out there to let people know, if you go through your narrative and you separate out the facts from the opinions and you upgrade those opinions to something that you can be proud of and you rewrite that story for yourself, I think you're going to start to meet with a level of success that you cannot even possibly imagine right now.
100%. And so for our final thought, we would ask you, what are your scars that have formed you, and how can we use those scars to our advantage?
Amen and
Thanks,
amen.
everybody, for tuning in and listening to today's episode, liking, subscribing, sharing, and being a part of the Jeff Heilman Project. We believe in you and the projects that you are coming to.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.